This conference will now be recorded.
Okay, so it's our pleasure to have here with us today Professor Alessandro Ancarani from University of Catania, Sicily, Italy. And Professor Ancarani might be well known by most of you. He was the former editor-in-chief of General Purchasing and Supply Management, which is one of the most prominent publications in the field of purchasing and supply chain management. The reason why we have invited him here is that because recently Professor Ancarani has developed a number of papers using quite interesting techniques which try to overcome some of the main shortcomings, I would say, which have been highlighted when it comes to research in the field of circular economy, with specific reference to supply chain management issues. If you look, for instance, at in papers, position papers published in the field of circular economy, the famous one from Kircher in 2018, one of the main shortcomings which is mentioned there is that circular economy research so far has been characterized by small n's, by small samples, by difficulties in drawing the conclusions which can be generalized. This is due to the fact that most of the research in circular economy, but also we can extend this more in general to sustainable supply chain management, it's been characterized by the use of the case study method, which by definition, as we have been talking about this morning, can create some problems when it comes to the need to generalize. Also, you might be aware that there is a recent trend from prestigious journals in the supply chain management domain be very skeptical about studies based on survey methods due to many shortcomings that these studies have, such as single informant bias, the fact that sometimes we collect data which is not reliable, not dependable, due to the fact that these surveys have been filled by random people in the organization which might not have full visibility of the organizational process. So the idea to invite Professor Ancarani here today was for him to share with us his recent experience in publishing papers in the supply chain management domain based on the usage of secondary data, either databases which are available where you can essentially buy a subscription and access a data bank can be used then for further analysis, but also utilizing information available in the public domain, such as articles from magazines, practitioners' journals, even newspapers, to build some sort of database of your own, and then using these for further analysis. So I think this can be of great interest to all of us. I'm looking forward myself to Professor Ancarani's talk, because I've read these recent papers, but I want to understand a bit more even about the technicalities that are behind these recent studies. So over to you, Professor Ancarani, and I'm sure that there will be a lot of questions even throughout the presentation. So don't be shy, raise your hand, and we can have it in an interactive fashion. Thank you very much for being with us. And we have a break after 1 hour and a further block of time. Okay.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you also for covering half of of my slides, so I really appreciate let me first thank the organizer for, of course, for the invitation and for such an event. I hope that I will be able to deliver to you some knowledge about what we call the secondary data, why they are useful, and the way in which they can be used, and sometimes not really useful for what we want to do. A brief, no, a brief, okay. A brief overview of the presentation, and Ray said to you that I will talk to you what is secondary data. So we will go through some definition, and we will try to distinguish between primary and secondary data, and try also to understand how to make research with the secondary data. So why? And why the analysis can be extremely useful, advantages and so pros and cons of the analysis. Types and sources, I will show you, but of course you have to go from the database, so for example, financial database that are available in some way by paying a fee, of course, and other database of that type, but also magazine, book, newspaper, but also internet, social media. All of them can be a source of secondary data, sometimes extremely useful and interesting, sometimes interesting, but not very useful because they do not match with what you want to research. That's one important point to be addressed. Now, I will show you. So for doing these limitation challenges, I will show a few case studies following what Andrea asked me. I will show you a couple of papers by myself and my colleagues about the use of secondary data, in one case about reshoring, and in the second case about the IoT introduction into the contract of tools, of course. And another case that is interesting, published in a very, very good journal. And I will show you also something about an example in which we use the Twitter data to understand the relationship between the sentiment in the social media and the oscillation in the stock prices of two main football teams in Manchester United. So I will show you very briefly. So, just to give you an idea on how wide it can be, the type of analysis that you can carry out with the secondary data. Okay, that's an idea. And with practical guidance, it means that at the end, I will give you a sort of map on how to use, for example, in vivo, that this morning Professor Serafini mentioned. So a couple of things that you can, of course, you have to go through the software by yourself. It's just a brief overview on what is possible and what is not possible with the use of computer-aided software for analysis of textual data. Okay, let's start. This is the definition. Of course, you can manage to find something different, but in general terms, what is considered secondary data is some data gathered and recorded previously for another project. So it is considered secondary data that you collect, that you don't collect by yourself. You find already there, already cooked, and the pros and the cons of the use already cooked. And of course, there might be historical. They are already assembled in some way. No need to interaction. This morning, the relationship, the richness of the relationship that you can have with the interviewer, with the people interviewed, it was extremely relevant for the qualitative analysis. Here we will say that, okay, But if we don't have to have a relationship, you may save time, money, and maybe some bias that you might have in the interaction. So no access. So here is a sort of breakdown of the importance of secondary data. So collected from someone else, and here is the comparison with the primary data, in which something is collected, but for a purpose. So the difference is that in secondary data, you have to match your purpose, your research objective, with the data that are already there. With the primary data, you can set, or you can follow your research question, and you can try to gather all the relevant data for answering that research question. Okay? That's completely different. Of course, most time data, secondary data, is easily available. Most time, no issue regarding disclosure. If something is publicly published, like in newspaper, you can use, maybe mention that you have gathered data from that source, but you don't have to pay anyone, or you don't have to explain with anyone. Can be helpful in comparative analysis and in defining the population. I mean, in looking at whatever, everything that has been published. And there is another aspect that is interesting. Secondary data can be extremely helpful in triangulation. So you can use both primary and secondary data in order to strengthen your findings. I mean, using both the advantages or the main advantages of both two. But here is that I consider the real image of the secondary data. So you have someone with mining, and gold is at the end. So you need a good tools. You have to mine deep, really, for the real insight. So it is important what? Nature of the relationship. Which are the relationships that we have? There are differences in the group related to the secondary data you are using. Trends, and you can also explore new and emerging social phenomena. I mean, with Twitter, Facebook, I don't know what else we can mention here. All these kind of media are extremely interesting. They can represent some new feelings, some new sentiments, some new approach to something. And just with this kind of approach, you can exploit all that findings from the data. In operations management, is the use of secondary data actually used, and is the secondary data also possible? Well, there are two kind of problems. Are they used now, or is someone using secondary data? And is it possible to publish so separated two different approach? So from the practical point of view, you can use all the secondary data you have, for example, with your company, data that you have easily available. On the marketing side, you can have a lot of information that you may use for other analysis. From an academic point of view, well, while up to 4 years ago, 5 years ago, my answer to this question would have been, well, it's not easy to publish in a very good, very well reputed journal with secondary data. Now everything changed. Our presentation has changed the approach from survey to case study. I'm always I'm concerned about the recording. But I'm always against the Americans. I mean, they have always that kind of colonization approach. So what they say is we can review after a couple of seconds. But from the academic point of view, they have the most relevant journals, so they set reviews actually. And up to 5 years ago, all was with the surveys collecting the bigger sample you could, and so on. Now that the CEO or other people in the companies are worried about responding to tens, hundreds of survey every year, no? They say, okay, no, with survey we have problem with a single respondents. That was something that it was clear even before. But now it's a very impressive problem. And the approach is, okay, let's go with the case study and let's go with the secondary data. It's easier. And so now we are trying to find an explanation of the fact that where maybe case studies and secondary data may be more reliable, more valid, and so on and so forth than the survey. Okay, maybe it's the case. So times are changing. This is the meaning of times are changing, reported in the last line. And the idea is that coming from social sciences, where the use of secondary data has been quite common since 10, 15, 20 years ago, and I believe also since the beginning. In general terms, we have started to use data first for longitudinal and large sample data, sample size data. So this means that the first use has been to have a bigger sample than you can have by directly sampling or something. And longitudinal. You want to know how any organization acts during its life, you have to spend years, 10, 15, in order to follow year by year what is happening, what is that. Or you can spend at least 1 year, month by month, looking at the results. Now you may have, please consider all those databases looking at the statistics. Oh, you can have 100 years of statistics. You can have full information on one variable or a set of variable for many, many years, allowing you for a quantitative analysis that is extremely interesting. So this is the first important question that has been used in the operation research area. Just to give you a quick overview, in a paper published in the International International Business Logistics, that is one of the main journals in the States of all, it was reported that there were 200 or 300 papers using secondary data since 2000. So in the last, it was 10 years, 11 years at the time of the publication in 2011, but already 200 papers were available, looking only at the higher level journals. No? So Academy of Management, Journal of Supply Chain Management, JBL, Production Operations Management, Journal of Operations Management. So the guys write the journal in there. And another point that is extremely important is that now we have big data. What's big data? Well, a very rich source of information, but unstructured sometimes, difficult to analyze. Let me give you an example. And for your client on daily, or I mean second by second performance in public offices for certificate, so birth certificates, building certificates, and so on. I have day by day all the people coming, how much they wait for being served, and data about the number of people served per day, and so on and so forth. So you have, we don't know how to use them. If you have an idea, please let me know. Because of course, one of the most important aspects that should be analyzed is the scheduling. It's a whole question. There have been also already, well, thousands of papers on that. So you have big data, you have also to find a new research question that you can address with big data. So if you have data, this is the situation. So there is rubbish, there is everything with this data, but you want to have the goal. So this is the answer to your research question. So the idea is that you have a very good opportunity to explore important research questions, but you have to be careful about how to use the secondary data for your purpose. Types of secondary data. We have already described, but just to give you some more details. So here is we are distinguishing between the internal and external source of secondary data. And the external can be distinguished into published and commercial. So here are data that are available inside the campus. Okay. Do we want to use another description of the secondary data against internal, external, but also ready to use that requires further processing? So sometimes you have data you can use as they are, sadly. Sometimes you need to reevaluate, mix together, or make something to be useful. And here, internal, external, published, computerized database, and syndicated service. Do you know what is syndicated service? Are all those research carried out by, for example, Martin, Nielsen, Forrester, and other big companies that make some analysis in general for a sector, for an industry, or something like that, and they provide answer to their own questions. So they cover all the topics they consider relevant. But they are, of course, they are expensive, well, extremely expensive. Also because they don't, they cannot give you all the report, but only the part of the report that are of your interest. You pay less, and they arrange the data according to your interest. Okay, so these are called the syndicated service. So here is a nice picture of what we have available. Of course, we already looked at the published business report books, but also internet. How? Let me give you an example about the hospitals. Now, if you want to explore the customer satisfaction of their hospital service, you might either go for a survey, so just ask the questionnaire to the customer, the patients, and ask them what do you think about it. But also, you can make a sentiment analysis of the tweets, or other kind of social media output, in which you can explore whether the people are actually satisfied with the service. The same for the high court. There are several papers already published on that. For example, in Italy, our colleagues at Roma La Sapienza University, Simone Citto, Mancuso, they analyze the tweets for the satisfaction with the airport services. So people that are in the airport and are using the toilet or the bar or the check-in and so on and so forth, they tweet something. Are they actually useful? Okay, in that case, they can prove that it was extremely useful because they have some information that was extremely difficult to understand. Because you can collect data, you can gather data from a lot of airports that would have been extremely difficult to go directly and investigate, not in different ones. Okay, that's interesting.
A form of bias, a sort of implicit bias. This, for example, thinking about myself. Every time I tweet something about an airport, about public service, buses showing up late, people are going to complain about that. I rarely write something positive because my expectation is that I am a taxpayer, so I pay taxes, I want to have good service. So if I'm getting good service, it's the norm.
Yeah, but you are talking about the paradigm of customer satisfaction. That is the difference between what is expected and what is received.
Yeah.
So it's normal that, of course, your evaluation is relative to your expectation. But there is something that is even more that is it's extremely important to understand, and this is why I went to this slide. That's the Google flu trends. Of course, it's timely to talk about some virus here. But the problem is that there is a flu trends directory in Google allowing to understand the amount of people that got flu in the period, the spike period. I will show you in the next slide. So they have information about close relationship between how many people search for flu-related topics and how many people actually have flu symptoms. So the idea was that those looking for flu have some symptoms. Not actually they have flu, but have some symptoms of flu. So they make some analysis and some trends, and they come up with a few extrapolation, some analysis. The problem is that in 2012, 2013, so in 2 seasons, the overestimation was more than 50% compared with the data actually available after a few days about those people really. And the problem, I reported these two estimations because they are the last one. No? So after they stop the service. If you go to this link, if you click on this link, you say, okay, the service has stopped since 2013 or something, and they didn't mention the problem they had, but it's actually because you can have much more useful extrapolation, I mean, the evaluation of the flu rate of the people with flu just by looking at the information. No, sorry, this one. The model of 3-week old data on cases that you have been using the Google flu trend. So 3 weeks delay, okay, but reliable data. Okay. This is the problem you can have with the data. Please.
I don't think that they close. It's just every Google Trends.
I went to and it is reported that they stopped.
Yeah, but now they have like the Google Trends, so you can search about anything and just Google the statistics.
I don't know. You might be right, but the problem is that it's clear how much you can be wrong in using data in which you make some assumption. Because the assumption there is that you type on the looking for flu, and you are actually having some symptom of the. So I'm not saying that Google is wrong. I'm saying that you have to be careful about using data but carefully using data without fully understanding and without fully support the hypothesis behind the research the data you are using. Okay? That's one. Let me go back to it. Okay. Another aspect is whether you have messy data. So you have messy data structured or unstructured. It's just an IT problem. Because sometimes you have structured data, so data you can open in Excel. If you go for a database, like the financial databases, you most times, I will show one case in which they are not, but most cases you have an Excel file or at least a PDF, and PDF that you can use for your analysis directly. Sometimes not. Sometimes not. Unstructured. And it is of course, here it can be possible to have a lot of data, a lot of information available, and it's easy to look at, taking into account the fact that sometimes there are missing values you are not going to collect in any other place. That's the data. You don't have, you cannot complete. Outliers and coding errors. So someone gathered the data for you. Someone put the data in the database, and maybe there was some analysis behind coding the information for putting in the cell in the database. It's wrong. It could be the case that the coding was not the correct one. Okay, but you can have still many information. For example, in the case like that, in the services at the public offices, I mean, it was in Hungary. You have this information. One of the problems was to use this data because it was a huge amount of information available from all the offices in Budapest and in the Hungary at large. So also this was one of the problems. But more problem you have in unstructured data. And this is the link with the qualitative research we discussed this morning. Because you have to code, and you have to give meaning to what you get. I mean, there is an example that is usually given in this case. Patients at the psychiatric hospital are asked about where you are. Well, so the aim was to understand whether they are conscious of the fact that they are in an hospital, in a certain type of hospital or not. Okay. So, where you are? And many answers were in Switzerland. So if you code for the words you can find in your interview or in your to say, okay, they are talking about a region, a country, and so on. Differently, if you can understand the meaning. For those with mental illness, Switzerland means freedom. So they convert the word freedom. So they want to be free. So the idea that they are in Switzerland, so I'm free. I feel free. So the meaning can be extremely different from what you get in the street, what you have as positive data. Okay. Example, where do I find data? Many places. If we go to this link, hopefully we will have here is the website of the UK Data Service, and you can have a lot of things. Census data, international macro data, longitudinal studies, UK surveys. So you can have a lot of information. Okay, this is the first. You can have other, like this one. This is a sort of aggregator of data. So it's a voluntary, so it's a repository of data, voluntary given to this consortium. So the people or the organizations or so on can go there. Okay, I will give you my data, and I want to use all the data available for the consortium. So it's an exchange of data availability. Take please into account the fact that most high-ranked journals are asking to give the data for supporting your research. For transparency, of course, but the second reason is to allow people to have to replicate your study or to add their data, and so one example for the analysis, for meta-analysis. No, it is not yet mandatory, I mean, but the idea is to have at the end all data available, also to avoid the problem of using the same set of data for several articles. So just you change one variable, another one, they put in a different order, and you publish 3, 4, 6 papers in that sense. You know, as Andrea said, I was the editor of the Journal of Parsing and Supply Management, and I'm currently the editor of the Journal of Public Procurement. And I fully know how the people manage to multiply the number of papers published. Oh? Exactly. Exactly. So this is well. Okay, other aspect. Here are a couple of examples about this is a publication looking at the online support groups, longitudinal data using this survey. For example, one important source of secondary data can be the survey made by some organization in different years. For example, manufacturing survey or other reshoring. The same we have said before, and I will describe. So if you have access to this data, you can use for making a longitudinal analysis. That with primary data is extremely difficult to carry out. Okay, this is the big data. So we already went through this. And of course, the problem with IT is extremely important. How we can use data coming from different things. Okay, so the problem now is how to deal with the challenges with primary data using secondary data. Here are but a few of the main challenges in operations management. Confidence sample. Raise the hand who is not going with a confidence sample in either or analysis. No one? So you have a couple of friends, you have a few companies available, and you say exemplar case. And you know, in case study, Eisenhardt published a very nice, interesting paper in which she and the co-authors explained how to select the case studies for being able to test an hypothesis or to contribute to theory development. And she said, polar cases, so you can have the two extreme, or exemplar case. So a company that, for example, for its importance, so if you look at the Google or Toyota, I can publish an example case because of the fact that it can be representative of the population, or because it's so big that it's interesting to understand, or so extreme. So it presents some peculiarities that are extremely relevant to look at. But in general terms, okay, I have a close collaboration with a company in Germany, and we are working together. Actually, they are paying for the PhD students, so I'm grateful to that. And they are interested in looking at the Industry 4.0 application in their suppliers. Since the commonality of the language, we have selected as the first case studies Italian, of course, suppliers. Not all suppliers, the main suppliers, but still Italian suppliers. And we will publish something using them, and that they are exemplar, that they are extremely important, and so on and so on. But this is a problem. And this is a problem because, well, maybe in the 3 years of the PhD program, we will go to many other companies, maybe all over the world, But in general terms, we use common sense. Correlation does not equal causation. No, most use the STEM approach, no structural equation model. But causation is not implied by grant. Not implied. Limited scope for extensive comparative research. It's difficult. Today, this morning, Professor Serafini said about the problem about the studies, no? Culture and other aspects may affect. We did an analysis in public procurement in relation with the small and medium enterprises and barriers, inhibitors, and possible enablers of awarding public contracts to small and medium enterprises. And we did it in Canada, in Hungary, and in Italy. Okay, we published the paper, of course, but I have to say that there are so many differences that the comparison is extremely difficult. So we, how can I say, that we try to find the commonality. In some ways, the approach to small and medium enterprises. So how to include small and medium enterprises, but it's difficult. Okay, so this is another aspect. Money on resources, of course. Again, let's address the money. The hand who is not having any problem with money. No, that's not true. Not true. All of us. Access to high quality measures, high attrition rates, low response rate. To send the questionnaire to 1,000 companies. How many is the number? Hopefully. So 10%. in between 7 and 12% is the average response rate. And of course, at the end, you have to justify that the sample is representative of the population. Of course, that's not easy. Okay. So, I'm with secondary data. Factors, availability. Are they available? Are easily available? No. Relevance. The relevance, not in general, for your research. Do they match your need? The problem is that you need to answer your question, your research question. Does the data match what actually asked to them? Adequacy, accuracy, depends on the source. It depends on who collected data. Reliability, consistency, and so on. And so in terms of these advantages of the secondary data, quality, not specific, the information may be incomplete. Maybe you need 7 variables, but the information covers just 5, 4, 3, not the 10 you need. So that may be a problem. Outdated. If you look at literature, you several times find papers published papers using data from 10 years ago, 5 years ago, because they were available and they used them. But are they still representative of what is happening? It depends. I'm not saying no, but I cannot see yes, of course. No, it depends on it. It depends on the type of problem you are addressing. If you want to go a little bit more in detail in these advantages, of course, you can save time. I don't need to go in deep in this. It's clear to all. But it depends. It depends. Because the time you save in gathering data may be spent in coding. That's all time a trade-off, of course, in between the two. Most time, data are of a higher quality. If I had to go to the chambers of commerce, get the balance sheets and put in a database and so on and so forth, it's not a problem only of time, but it's also time of reliability and the capability to do this work. So most times the quality may be higher. Secondary data can be extremely useful as an antecedent of your research, as a pre-research. So you can look at the secondary data, you can understand the problem, and then you go for gathering the data you need for answering your research question. That's something that, like this morning, was expressed that most time case studies are the preliminary approach to a problem that is not well defined. So you carry out a case study looking at a problem that no one else has addressed before, and then you understand. Maybe you have a focus group or what else, and you understand which are the variables more important, which are relationship among the actors or among the variables, and then you can go with the question. Because otherwise you don't have information about how to structure the question. The same is, so you cannot go for the questionnaire if you don't have clear in mind everything. So secondary data can play exactly this role, explaining you, making you understanding what to look at. So again, the two could be used together. So secondary and primary sometimes they are open source. So all of them, if you look at the newspaper, if you look at the internet, no, most of them are open source. And transparency, of course, is interesting. But as you can see, the advantage became a disadvantage. So data has already been collected. So you may not have all information on how and why certain type of information was collected. Let me give you a personal example. We have worked on the. I'm opening my secrets. Actually, hopefully it will be functioning in the journal. But we have with the problem. We were working on the relationship between leadership in organization, organizational climate, and engagement. So we were looking at how the people are, whether the people are engaged, and if leadership and organizational climate are antecedents of the engagement. Okay? But if you want to investigate in detail all these three, you need a questionnaire of about 200 items. So we say, okay, no, it's too much, no one will do it. So calculate the number of items. How, in organizational climate, there are 4 different climates, and we got 2. So we say, okay, we are investigating only a certain type of organizational climate. So we have just 90 items of that. Good. We have 2,600 and something questionnaires. That's what. The problem is that the first highest level journal, which we sent the journal, said, okay, it's a good, it's up. And one of the reviewers said that, in the rejection, of course, said, you should privately send me how many times you regret to have cut the questionnaire, but of course, it announced the response rate. Okay? And there is some reason for cutting. So there is. But again, it depends. You may not know of any particular problem that occurred during that collection. So you don't know. Simply you have the data. Sometimes you are left wanting more. Oh yes, but if I could add something else, it might be useful because some parts the variance can improve. Of course, there is a temptation of a statistical fishing trip. I mean, here is the report. Sometimes we have big data, but do we have a research question that is extremely important for PhD students? First, the research question. You cannot go into the PhD thesis without knowing, without having clear how to ahead, which kind of activities. So you need to have your research question. Then you have to understand which theory you have to use or you can't use. And then you can test and verify the hypothesis. Of course, it might be the case using the grounded theory that you use the empirical data to understand. Okay, the hypothesis or to contribute to the theory. Okay, but still the research question should be confirmed. So again, if you have a big amount of data, it doesn't mean that you have the research question. You have to find first the research question. Otherwise, you will make just what is done most cases with the statistical analysis and everything. Okay, but at the end, and then always you have to ask you, and then how can I can use this information to find time and effort, of course, invested in a nice structure of the data set to explain and justify the theoretical and analytical approach used. So in general terms, you have to spend time and effort. This doesn't mean that you are wasting time and effort, but again, should consider carefully how it is worth or not, or whether it is worth or not. Okay. Oh, here is the sort of summary of the different aspects. Here are a few other disadvantages. Shortened measure. So if someone will use my data, again, shortened measure. This is a clear example. So you don't have time, you don't have the availability of the people for filling a big questionnaire. If you, we have been involved in a reshoring project. So the analysis of those companies that offshore to China, what else, and that are coming back for some reason. Okay? We have been involved also in a funded project by the European Commission, so we have defined a database. I will show it quickly later. But we tried to collect information through the Bank of Italy. Because every year or every 2 years, the Bank of Italy send a questionnaire to all the manufacturing companies and so on, asking for several aspects. And we say, can we add information required in your questionnaire? And yes, of course, one. So yes or no? Sometimes we have a very good database, but you have a simple answer, you have a very short type of information. So take care of problem of measurement and so on. So in terms of challenges, you have to take into account, look at the different possibilities. So this is the dream for any researcher, reliable and valid. This is the nightmare. Oh, this is the nightmare. Not reliable and not valid. Not valid. Low validity and low reliability. Reliable, but not valid. Okay? This is the problem we can have with secondary data. Why? Because you cannot adjust any of this inconsistency or these problems. You cannot be fair by yourself. There are being collected and so on. Can you, I just said you cannot fix any problem. Well, there is an exception. Using composite measure. So if you triangulate, you use different source, you can understand much better, and you can fix the information. So you can collect several information from several sources, align each other, and try to fix the problem. That can be the problem. A good approach to solve the problem. So just to give you the trade-off, the balancing act, inexpensive, sorry, sacred quickly, but unknown accuracy ill-fitting for the problem. Just to summarize. So this is a sort of reminder. So fewer resource requirements and obtrusive, longitudinal studies feasible, comparative and contextual data, unfortunately discovered may occur, permanent and available, time saving, relevance, availability, short time to collect, don't forget, low cost, most times. Because, for example, if you want to have information from a good financial database like Bloomberg, but here, and the same is coming from Reuters, actually the same. The same is for Amadeus, other for Europe. I will show it as well. This is just again, I'm not go through all the points, but we already bullet point because we already discussed. So now we know that we have a variety of secondary data. We know about the advantage and disadvantage of secondary data. We can use a range of techniques. I will show you later, but now we know that we can go for different methods to analyze the secondary data. We need to evaluate the suitability of secondary data for your research question, and it is necessary to understand the matching in between secondary data and your research. So this is a sort of breakdown of the steps you need to follow to use the secondary data. So first, identify what you wish to know and what you already know about your topic. List of key terms and names. When we went for the newspapers in the research study, first we compiled a list of 50, 60 terms that were relevant for coding the newspapers and to identify the relevant news that we want to use in the study. Look for the reports available. Use the literature to understand if your keywords are correct. Consult, okay, and by the rest of the guides. And identify authorities in the area and consult them. So you always have to keep your mind open. Keep the mind open. Because maybe you don't need to collect all the data you are looking for. What type of secondary data? So documentary, surveys, multiple source secondary data. And here is a sort of detail. And this is, I think, is interesting because a sort of a list, quite complete, of all the different secondary data you can look at in order to have some insight. So the first message is there are so many sources available, and you should look at for the information they have. Of course, you may be lucky or not. Depends on several things. There is a list of multiple sources of secondary data. For example, I described Amadeus. You have all the information about the European companies. Of course, all those in the stock market, all those with the balance sheet, the chambers of commerce. So they are so not all, not the medium, not the small enterprises, for example. Okay. Next is newspapers. So there are databases in which you can find all the news published in many years, and you can perform an analysis of this data. So select all those news with the heading in which there is terms that you are looking for. Digital archive, and other aspects. Let me give you a couple of examples. So this is the first page of the paper we published on the Journal of World Business. It is a quite good journal. All the postcard, yes, so it's quite good journal. And we published this paper last year, looking at the manufacturing strategy and the adoption of Industry 4.0, evidence from Europe. So we want to understand whether different strategies would lead to different implementation of Industry 4.0 techniques, tools, machinery. Okay. Stage of the analysis. First, literature review. Definition of a theoretical framework. That's extremely relevant. Then we went for the identification of a suitable source of data. I remember, very long meeting in which each of us, we were a consortium of Italian university, were four universities, Catania, L'Aquila, Bologna, and Udine, along Italy, just to cover everything. So we discussed about having a survey, about having case studies, about trying to contact some, the Union of Chambers of Commerce or other organizations, sectoral organization or association. But I think at the end, what came another idea. Give a look at the newspapers. Give a look at the videos. So the interviews available. Are there interviews and are there news available? Yes. So we went through. We went in the archives of the most important economic journals. So, for example, Guardian or Economist or Sole Petrol or other journals, of course in English, publishing in English. We were not able to look at the Swedish, Norwegian, and so on. But I'll show you that we changed the approach during the time. So we asked the companies that is specialized in looking with all the 28 languages of the European Union software, so that first filtered all the information. So we collect all the information in Europe. But okay, identification, data review, measuring, development, and testing, data cleaning. So we went through the news. Consider this one. This is an example on Europe with the European Reshoring Monitor. This is the project of the European Commission. We have been entrusted for developing. So there is a database publicly available with all the information about reshoring. Date, reasons, region, offshoring, previous offshoring, the sector, and so on and so forth. Okay, so you can have all the information. This is the report, and this is the database. So you can put the company name, or you ask for the sector, and so on, and you have a list of companies. A list of country, date, offshoring, reshoring, sector, and so on. Here is one of the list of one company, Saint-Gobain, for example. If I remember, metal companies. Yeah. Okay. It's a very recent reshoring announcement. And what I want to this is the link of the information we have in the database, where first identified by Embrain. Embrain is a company UK-based, which is specialized in identifying certain type of information in the paper, magazine, specific records. So they identified with that. We gave them the keywords. So they were looking for different keywords in English, and they translated the keywords into the different languages. Okay? Then we looked for the article, and when one or two or three or more of that words were reported, they extracted the information and they made an abstract in English for us. We checked the abstract, it's a very long process. We checked the abstract, so the first researcher or a couple of researchers look at the abstract and confirm whether there's a news about reshoring. Because sometimes reshoring was mentioned, but was not actually a reshoring initiative, was something different. Okay? Then we send to another group of researchers, a senior one, who confirmed again, and then the quality management. So there was one person in the group who was the quality manager who, by sample, tested whether actually the information were correct and were actually identifying the reshoring case. I'm not giving you some the details because I want you to learn about how I did my work. But just because information about how you should use this kind of information. Okay? So this is, for example, the case of Saint-Gobain. So this is the type of newspaper news that we got for the edition Ponte Cousson. So even local newspapers have been analyzed. And here is the steps. Here are the steps we followed into the detail. So I will leave you, of course, the slides, and you can go through. But basically, what I mentioned is what we did in this case. We did the same for the United States, and I'm giving you this other detail. Why? Because we used a database already available. So Research Now is developed by Moses and an organization, of course, with sponsored by those people that want to make clear or to emphasize the resurgence of manufacturing in the States. Okay? That's clear. That's clear. Exactly. So this is the main website for the Research Now. This is the library. This is the example on how it appears, and here is the link with the different cases. So I took this picture at the end of January 2020. Oh, it was the last one. Oh. And if I click here, I can get this list with all the information similar to what we did in the Research Now, and with the link with the news. What we did, we checked by example, and we, how can I say? I was not satisfied with the results. So some information were actually good. Some information is were a little bit pushed, a little bit, because maybe of the American people. Okay. So we decided to go again through the news. All of them. The language actually, if you sort by, because America did again, it's a keep from offshoring, reshoring, and also outward funding. So the Chinese investing in the States are in this database. So if you sort the number of cases are fewer, and for most of them, actually this link doesn't work. All those cases. Okay. So at the end, we have something like about 400 cases. 400 cases. That's pretty good. But the quality was much more relevant than the number. Extremely more relevant than the number. Okay. For information and so on. So this is, if I, in this case, the link works. So this is the newspaper news area development, and we went through with the code. But we had also another source of information, not in Europe, but in the United States. Most of the information comes from interview. So you have the journalist who is interviewing the owner or the director or someone at high level. That was a very rich source of information. Because here, hopefully it is working, but I'm not sure. Anyway, what was extremely relevant was that you can look at the packets, you can look at the emphasis. That's the site. Oh, this is the news.
Monster Moto makes go-karts and mini motorcycles, and advocates of bringing back U.S. manufacturing would do well to take a close look at the company. Monster Moto moved its assembly back to the U.S. from China, opening this facility in Ruston, Louisiana in 2016.
So it is a referring case. They actually explained it clearly that they had reshored from China. The date in which they reshored, the type of product they were reshoring.
Won't find a made in USA stamp on any of their products. Reuters correspondent Nick Carey traveled to Louisiana from Detroit to see Monster Motor's operations firsthand.
So where?
Until recently, their products were made in China. They decided what they wanted to do was bring manufacturing back to the US and ease the export of that assembly back. But as all their parts are made in China, they're now to figure out how to bring that manufacturing back. The problem is that the supply chain doesn't exist in America.
Okay, we don't need to spend more time on that, but just to give you an idea on what we did with the information, and you can appreciate how that the quality of the information here is higher because you have the person who is not only transcribing the interview, but is writing, emphasizing some aspect and some other. And in most cases, we have the interview with the owner. And again, it's something that gives you a very nice information on what actually happened. Okay, so this is an example. But you can have a lot of different data. So my colleagues say that it's because of my I was how do you say also because this is the list of databases available at Erasmus University. It's a list of 32 databases in finance. Of course, if you have in a rich institution, it's different than if you are in a poor institution. Okay, so this is a list, just the first and the last one, because here is, for example, Thomson One. Here is, for example, Bloomberg, Compostad, and so on. It's Orbis again. Okay, really, you have a lot of information that you can use from this game. This is the Amadeus screen, and you can see here the balance sheet. You have all the information for several years, for example. So you have 10 years of information, so you can do a longitudinal analysis. For example, it is not culture, but we are trying to complete the analysis. We are looking at the impact on the company's performance of the reshoring move. So they move back, and how they changed the performance in terms of return on equity or something other financial indicator. And this, for example, is possible to have different type of key financials available directly, and it's reported here in millions of euros. Okay. Bloomberg. I don't have an institution Bloomberg. I know Calvin has, but I went to another institution in UK. They allowed me to use the database. Which kind of information? I didn't report, of course, the financial data because that's actually. But I was interested in another aspect: suppliers. So in Bloomberg, and it's the only source you can have, you have the information about the suppliers of the company. So you have the company, you have the balance sheet, and there is an analysis of the suppliers. Okay, which kind of analysis? I mean, country, revenues, relationship in terms of money involved, percentage of impact on cost, and other information in the data. So you have a very, and up to last year, it was not possible to download the information. Last year was possible, since last year. So when I went to the institution, they said, sorry, you have to take the picture of the screen because they do not allow to download. And the reason was that they were not assuring the quality of the data. Because and you can find all the information about companies that are trading in the United States. Because in the United States, for those trading and in the stock market, they are obliged to give information about the suppliers. So for any European company that has not any collaboration with the States, you don't have the information. So this is possible to download, but not this yet. That's the supply chain. So you have the suppliers, you have the company, and you have the clients. That's tier one.
Of course.
Yeah, but not only the most important in terms of revenues. All of them. So, for example, Apple, you have to download 6 files or 7 files because they are 300, 400, 500, for example.
Technically, you could in terms of the change and
yeah, sure. It depends on the fact that they have.
They are coming from companies and they are American.
It's not easy. It's not easy. Okay. We are still trying. But anyway, it's interesting. Okay. So, find the data, establishing that required secondary data is available, locating precise data required. We have to stop at 3 first, isn't it?
3 for the break.
Okay. So 10 minutes for this first part. Yeah, there are a couple of slides that report already what we discussed. Other examples, interesting. Social media. I want to spend a couple of minutes looking at social media. I know we were waiting for the Manchester United data. I'm sure.
It's 25. 5 minutes. It's 5 minutes. 5 minutes.
Thank you very much.
Honestly, everybody remembers that movie with the Italian movie with Fantozzi.
Okay.
New Year's Eve.
Okay, in Italian, only for Italians.
Sorry.
Okay, sorry. 1.5 billion people, even more, in the largest social network. Okay, so a really rich source of data. Oh, it might be a good source, a rich source of data. And data are used for several things. You can recognize the two contenders in the election 2012, and the analysis of the tweets regarding the likes. So the red is Romney, sorry, and the blue was Obama a long time, no? And actually it was clear at the end. So this is also the vice president appreciation by the people and the first lady. So of course, it is not a research question, maybe it's how important is the first lady, but that's an example that can be useful. And this is, for example, a possible sentiment analysis developed with Twitter. Here are the states of the mind: pleasant, high confidence versus unpleasant, low confidence, that show you how is distributed the sentiment about something. And this is an interesting, if someone is looking for social media data or is curious about how to use Twitter data, this is a good reference. It is a very recent paper published in the Journal of Action Economics about the Twitter and Twitter data for supply chain practice and research. Okay? So there's not something that I'm inventing up. It's something that is already there. Okay? So it tweets metadata, and you can go for a descriptive analysis, a content analysis, and a network analysis. So you can use different tools to understand how those kind of information are connected. And if you look here, here is descriptive. So you use what is reported just in terms of numbers. Here is the content analysis, word analysis, hashtag analysis, sentiment analysis. And here you can go for the social science type of analysis with the network analysis. So here is the representation of the sentiment analysis. Pros and cons: low cost, zero, more or less. You don't have all the data available. You have just some part. If you want more data, you have to ask for. It's a more complicated, more complex process. If market, direct insights from the users. So if you believe the content reported in the Twitter, you can use. Oh, and of course there are cons, like not everyone is online and online all the time. So it's difficult to rely data from social sites to the market research or other aspects. Okay? So for example, if you are in a conference and you want to understand the sentiment of the attendance, so if you are lucky to stay boring all the time here in the class or not, the Twitter may be a useful source of information, because its sentiment may be expressed, not by all of you, of course. No one is tweeting, but maybe the sentiment expressed by the people that tweet are really the ones that can be attributed to the audience. And this is the paper we are writing with some colleagues in Hungary, about the interrelation between fluctuation of stock prices of soccer clubs and the social media activities of their fans in the global level. So this is the, of course, we could perform an analysis only for those companies, for those soccer clubs on the stock market, only public companies. And there are just a few. Well, this is the list of the most important, of course, football club on the stock market. And this is an example of the tweets, weekly relative tweets intensity aggregate for clubs. So we decided to compare the activity of two of the main soccer clubs, or Manchester United, total number of followers around 17 million. A huge number of people. Real Madrid, 29 followers. Barcelona. So for the Juventus, just peanuts. But you know. So we decided to go for the two, for which we have an availability of the data from 3 years, basically. So 2012, 2013, 2014. So we traced the events, sporting events in the period, okay? And we compared the two, basically. And these are the results. Don't look at the colors and so on and so forth, but for Juventus. So here we are looking for the different days. So day 0, day 1, day 2, day 3, after the event. And the response in terms of stock price of the Juventus fans, it's much more, how can I say, quick than the Manchester United one. So more patient, more attracted and more impacted by the event. So this means that the manager could use the social media to, in some way, drive the stock price to help reducing the negative impact and emphasizing the positive impact, for example. And this is, well, it was a research question, but it's interesting now also for the marketing, that it's increasingly important for those companies. Okay, we can stop here, and so we're going to break. So when we invest on outfit brands, how much do you want?
Is there a smoker house?
It's a
Stereo.
which I think the specific. Yeah, something more. For someone that has the treasury is there, but yeah, I got it. Very good, yes. And with this one. Let's go with this one. So they will say that you want to put different events with the same correlation here. Possible. The problem is that your light will 60. Like this. Yeah, I would make a try to put it somehow. Check them. Okay.
In the conference room.
I said that the meaning is also basic together. This is yeah.
I would like to be a nice.
Okay, sorry, I mean, I need to stop this section and the recording. We will start in 14 minutes on a new channel. You should have already the link for it. Thank you very much. Talk to you in a short while.